Oklahoma, a friend of the show and a dear patriot, somebody who knew Charlie well, was a regular on the Charlie Kirk show, joins us live now. Senator, thank you. I think that we're going to be spending the rest of the week, certainly through Sunday, eulogizing and memorializing Charlie. While I want to get to the heavy issues and the heavy work at hand in disrupting and destroying left-wing domestic terrorism, I want to just give you an opportunity to talk about what Charlie meant to you, perhaps share a personal story.
It's going to make me emotional if you do that, brother. So that wasn't how that was supposed to start. Dang it, Vinny. I wasn't expecting that. Here's let me just sum it up for Charlie. Me moving forward, I've dealt with a lot of death in my life. You and I have talked about what I used to do before I was in Congress and before stuff that's not on my true resume. And so I've learned how to process it. And first of all, Charlie's death hit me harder than most because it was senseless. It was pointless, it was hard for me to process why somebody that actually loved people, that spoke on Christian values, who was a gentleman that took the argument to their backyard and gave them a platform to debate him, and he would debate with love on Christian values, on biblical principles, on historical facts, on the founding fathers, on Federalist Papers, the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights. It didn't matter. He would go through it, and he could debate you on any of them. And yet somebody wanted to silence him. But as I went through the weekend, what Charlie meant to me was someone that I had a tremendous amount of respect for, that had a vision of politics, had a vision of winning the souls and heart of the young population by doing something no one else was doing. That has switched for me because I had a tremendous amount of respect and love and respect for what he was doing. But now I've got to switch to his legacy, and his legacy is a Christian man that was a devoted husband, that was an awesome father, and he had his principles in place, which it was God, family, and country. And hearing him speak, which I've gone back through, and I went down rabbit holes now, listening to him, and now my algorithms are all kicking up constantly on social media, and now I want to be a father like him. I want to be a husband like him. Yesterday, JD shared when he was doing his show, which I was there in JD's office with him when he was doing the Charlie Kirk show. And in the opening, he shared that Charlie had never raised his voice to his wife. I can't say that. My wife knows how to push my buttons more than anybody, but yet I love her dearly, and she's my best friend. But she also will say the same thing about me, as far as pushing her buttons. But that's an example. To live the example of a father through Christ's eyes is an example, and I want to be that example. I want that to be my legacy. Not that I was a senator. Not that I was anything else, but that I want a friend like JD to be able to speak about me the way that JD spoke about Charlie. That has changed my mindset. So while I've went through the aggravation of hurt and disbelief, I am now set to the point of pride. I got to know Charlie. I get to tell my grandkids I knew Charlie, because what he started and now what is happening around the world, it has never happened to you and I in our lifetime. This is something that is going to be a movement that's going to change generations to come. It's going to change Gen X. It's going to change Gen Z. It's going to change our campuses. And we're not going to see the full effect of it until 20 years from now. And you and I, Benny, get to say, we knew him personally. He was a friend. There's not a lot of people that get to say they knew JFK. There's not a lot of people that get to say they knew RFK. There's not a lot of people that get to say they knew Martin Luther King. But that's what we get to see, and that's what we get to say, and we get the opportunity to continue this legacy. The fact that there was only 9,000 chapters on colleges' campuses on September 10th. There was only 1,100 high school chapters on September 10th. And now there's 37,000 requests around the world. And keep in mind, there's only 23,000 high schools in the country. To just say that that's how many people is wanting to be part of Turning Point USA chapter, it's an honor now. Now I get to, I've always had a hard time with memorial services when they say it's a celebration of life. And this is the first time I actually get it. This is the first time that I actually get it. My mom said it best in a text that she sent me. And my mom hasn't texted me 5 times since texting has been invented. And she sent me this big old long text. And she knew I was hurting, and she knows I've dealt with death a lot. And my wife has even had a hard time with it because she doesn't see me get emotional. Unless I'm talking about my wife and kids, I don't get emotional, especially when it comes to death. But my mom said it best. She said, Charlie was a Christian because he spoke about it all the time. He spoke to you about his faith all the time. And the fact that his spirit had to know that he had a short time in life, only 31 years, because he got so much accomplished in that short time. And she said, I'm not making the comparison of the two, but there was one man that's also talked about in history that had a short time in life. And he had 12 disciples, and look how his gospel spread. She said, I'm not comparing him to Jesus Christ. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the Spirit knew he had 31 years. And now it's going to continue farther than he even imagined in his life. It's going to go farther than his ability. And I think that helped me more than anything when my mom sent that to me. I was like, okay, I'm a 48-year-old man who has a ridiculous title, and my mom is still encouraging me in that way and helping me process things. And I think we can all learn from that.
Charlie will be considered, I believe, amongst some of the greatest Christian martyrs, and certainly is an American martyr. And you're already seeing the revival that has sprung up in this nation in Charlie's name, and again, at his approval, smiling down from heaven. This is something that Charlie said constantly, and every time he was asked about death or legacy, Charlie only ever responded with his Christian faith, I want to be known for my faith and courage in it. And this is what Charlie said again and again and again, and you can see that legacy, of course, with full churches, full baptisms, full parking lots, and Jesus walks and prayers and vigils throughout America. So I think that legacy is certainly secure, and it is the hand of God acting right now on
Benny,
our nation.
Did you see what was it at the Angel Stadium when they had the praise and worship? I think it was at the Angel Stadium. I'm not sure, the baseball game
really?
where they did the praise and worship song, and they had people standing there with their hands up in the air praising the Lord. And at a baseball game. I don't know if you saw it. If not, I'll look it up and we'll get
a baseball game in one of the most sunken and demonically possessed and darkest places in America there in Los Angeles. Yeah, you can feel the spiritual energy whenever you're there.
I was just
makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? And I mean this sincerely, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we become acquaintances that's turning into friends. Can I truly ask you, how are you doing? Because I know you guys were, I was friends with Charlie. You two were close, and it's tough. Sometimes you just need a hug, and so if you need that, I'll be happy to do that for you at some point. But how are you holding up?
So in moments like this, you have to remind yourself who the man was and what he did for your life. I have a family in a safe and beautiful state here in Florida because of Charlie Kirk. I am no longer an alcoholic because of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was somebody who established in my life Christ as the center, when booze and degeneracy, frankly, when I first met Charlie, was the center of my life. Charlie Kirk in many ways saved me from myself, from eternal damnation. Well, he prophesied to me. He was a man who spoke into my life. And when my family, there was a hail of bullets traveling down our block in Washington, D.C., When fire threatened my children's lives in Washington, D.C., Charlie offered me his home and his personal residence to stay in for as long as we needed to find a safe and secure location. He's the only man who did that. And we stayed for months. And the reason why I'm in Florida, Senator, and the reason why I have a thriving family here and business is because of Charlie. I must now internalize that and ask the Lord why. Why did you take Charlie? And to that, I searched the scriptures. And you can look to the very earliest days of the Christian church and find that the martyrdom of Stephen, a young man who was Charlie's age, and I got chills, and I get chills now thinking about it. I couldn't believe it when I looked it up. Charlie's age, who was murdered in public, stoned, in fact, by the authorities because he was speaking truth. He was speaking truth that made people uncomfortable. He was speaking the light of Christ when it was illegal. Stephen was doing his own prove me wrong about the life of Christ. And he was dragged out and killed for it. In fact, it was the Apostle Paul who was holding the garments so that everyone could kill Stephen. Upon Stephen's death, there were 200 Christians that were cloistered away and hidden in Jerusalem. They were in fear of their lives. The church was never more fragile. It was truly able to be smote by evil with the right strike. And after Stephen was the single greatest expansion of Christianity in the history of the world. It went from 200 believers to 200,000, reaching every corner of every nation. The man who held the garments to stone Stephen went on to write the entirety of the New Testament, the majority of it. His name was Saul then, and he was the Apostle Paul after. And that was the power of a martyr. And that was that God uses martyrdom throughout the Christian faith in order to save people. Why? Because people don't die for a lie, Senator. People die for the truth. And when someone is willing to give up their life, when someone's willing to live for the truth, as Charlie did, and then die for the truth, as tends to happen, people stop and pay attention. Have you ever seen anyone pass away? Have you ever seen anyone die and then suddenly their social media followings double or triple on someone who is no longer presently on this earth, alive with his Savior in heaven? Have you ever seen that? No one's ever seen it in their lives. I've never seen a death in my life, and there's been many great and famous men who've died in my nearly 40 years on this planet, Senator, who never inspired more people to go to church. Like I never saw churches filled, standing room only, parking lots down the street, because other great men died in my lifetime. This was a specific Charlie Kirk miracle. And so if you're asking, my takeaway from this is, what would Charlie have wanted? Well, I've been through some major battles with Charlie. We'd witnessed the 2020 election, which was soul crushing. And upon the news of Joe Biden's installation in some of the darkest days of, I think, our republic, Charlie Kirk grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and said, now's not our time to cry or be miserable. It is to us to carry the torch, to stand upright, and to continue the mission of America first. If it dies in our hearts, it will die in everyone's heart. And so now is the time, and this is an exact quote, now is the time, Benny, to go 50 times harder, is what Charlie would say to me. And so that is what I will embody. Now is not my time to cry or to sob or to be blubbering weakling. Now is the time to go 50 times harder for Charlie.
That is well said. I mean, I'm telling you, from the start to right then, Vinny, that is the best example I've ever heard of a martyr, and the best example of truly Charlie's life. That is, once again, I go back to my goal now. Charlie set that example that I want friends to be able to talk about me like that. That's what I want my life to be. Title, don't care. What I accomplish, I don't care. I just want to be able to have people to be able to visit with like me or about me like that, and actually have a celebration of life.
Yes. So that's what we were witness to. We were witness to what I believe. I'm not sure I've ever seen a miracle, but now that I like think back on Charlie's life, now I believe that I was witness to a slow motion miracle of what Charlie was doing. Nobody ever, no young man at 13 years old. Young men at 13 years old, I don't know how old your boys are, but young men at 13 years old are typically getting like Legos stuck up their nose. Charlie Kirk was wandering the halls of the RNC convention while Mitt Romney was running for president, trying to fund Turning Point USA, trying to look for his first donors in a borrowed suit from his father. God has a calling on his life, and it was a miraculous thing to see. And that's why there's no replacing. There's no replacing Charlie. There's simply the continuation of his energy and the remembering of his legacy in our own ways and with our own disciplines. And so since you are in the Senate, and since I know that we are up against a hard out, I did want to ask you about this, getting to the hard work that perhaps only a senator can do. Will there be a special committee set up perhaps to investigate left-wing radicalization and terrorism? Do you want to be on that committee? Is there a push for that in the Senate? I believe there certainly should be. Follow-up question to that is the Smith-Mundt Act. I know that some of your fellow senators are talking about potentially reestablishing that to ensure that there is no ability to have government-shared propaganda in order to disrupt the American public. A two-part question, Senator. The floor is yours.
Both those, yes. Here's what I don't want to happen with this special committee or select committee is, we need to go after these radical groups. We need to go after these domestic terrorists. And it's interesting to me how the tides have turned right on this left that was saying that they felt threatened, yet you didn't see the same type of violence. I said this on my social media. I've said this openly. Is that there's a big difference between Charlie Kirk's death and I'm not going to even mention the other people's names, but where you didn't see the burning of the cities, the smashing of the windows. You saw prayer rituals. You saw people turning to Christ. You saw an outpouring of support and not violence. And so when we do the investigation needs to be it needs to be focused specifically on looking at those that are funding these programs. It's not free speech. We're not going after free speech. It's not going after hate speech. There's a line that is crossed between having a social media platform and speaking your mind versus paying people for destruction, paying for people to go to Cuba, as you were pointing out earlier, to work with radical groups. There's a difference. There's a thin line.
They bragged about it.
Hate speech. Yes, there's
they're bragging about it. They did do that. They did do that.
No,
yes.
Right. Yeah. And so there's a thin line between hate speech and freedom of speech, which was protected in the Constitution, and then stepping across it and actually inciting violence and funding the violence too. Paid agitators are insinuating violence to some degree. And so what is that line? I think there is a role for Congress to play, but we can't allow it to become a division. We've got to get to the root of the problem. Now, Kash Patel and the DOJ and the President of the United States is focusing directly on that. Who is funding these programs? And you may have the left media that'll be saying that we're trying to censor free speech. We are not. We're going after the violent acts that they are doing, not the speech, not their ability to post. It's when they incite the violence that leads to acts what just took place. This gentleman, and I'm not going to mention his name either, but it will just use his initial TR. How TR was radicalized wasn't in his home. He was radicalized by individual groups, we believe. We'll look into it. I don't want to say he was 100%, but we're going to look into it. And that funding mechanism that is doing that, is that coming from billionaires here inside the United States? Is it being funded by outside adversaries into this country that wants to disrupt and bring down our democracy from within, which is what was said by Stalin? How is it that we can stop that influence that is directly attacking our democracy, because it is attacking our democracy? And so anything we can do in the Senate, we will do. And any support we can give the DOJ in doing so, we can. It doesn't take a special committee for the DOJ to enforce the laws of the land, though. But that isn't needed. So how can we work to be helpful? That's the goal. And we want to work side by side with the White House and with DOJ, with Capital, Pam Bondi, and the Senate for everybody. This is for everybody. This isn't a political thing. This is for everybody to protect our democracy, because this is a threat on democracy of what is happening right now.
I just want to pop something up from somebody who I know that you've worked with before in the House, Anna Polina Luna, who made a lot of news this morning, beginning to call out left-wing billionaires who are foreign, who fund militant organizations here that orchestrate violent riots. We know that they do this. We can trace the money back. They're calling for a full Treasury freeze on assets. Now, the vast majority of rich people on earth have assets here in our nation and have assets in American banks. Do you agree with this? If proven that these foreign left-wing billionaires are in fact inciting domestic terrorism?
If proven, 100%, without question. This is how you get to it. Like I said, there is a thin line that separates hate speech and freedom of speech to the violence. And when you step across that line, that's when we have the right to protect our republic, to protect our democracy, and those that live within it.
Yes. Neville Singham is the individual here. Obviously, many people know the George Soros name. Birds of a feather. All right. Well, thank you, Senator. Godspeed, and thank you for that poignant and profound memory and recollection of Charlie Kirk. You've already remembered Charlie Kirk in the best way possible, which is to fall in love, get married, and have 1 million kids. And that's what he always told me. I said, fall in love, get married, and have 1 million kids. And well, we're doing our part in the Johnson family to keep up with you. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on.